A new video has Northeast Arkansas talking. It's just been released, and it shows a suspect being mortally wounded by police. But there's a lot in this that I think people are missing. And so we're going to analyze that right here, right now, on NEA Report. Hang on. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on NEA Report. Stan Morris right here with you, and another one to have to go through. This one's going to be graphic, and there's just no way around it. It's not suitable for everyone. So I want to let you know, first of all, there's going to be a lot of questions I've seen in the comments that I want to get to and answer in this video. And what we're showing you right now is the first 30 seconds of the body camera footage. Now I'm going to pause it right here because everyone is asking, why is this silent? The reason is because this pre-records before the officer turns it on. That's why you'll see the first segment of body camera footage often silent. It's often why whenever you hear the audio come on is when you see them flick the switch. That's when they're actually turning it on. You're just getting the pre-recorded part as well. Now I want to show this video to you first in its entirety. So take a look.
Drop it! Drop it! I swear to God, drop the fucking gun! Drop it!
Gotcha. And from there, if you want to continue watching it, you can go to our YouTube page, or you can scroll down on Facebook and you can see more. It's difficult to watch. The suspect following this was rendered aid by the officers. They did call for medical assistance. They had to secure the suspect. But there's a lot of stuff in this that people are missing, and I'm going to address some of that now. I've already mentioned some stuff already. But people are saying and calling this murder. And I just want to make sure everyone understands what happened here before we use words like that. First of all, let's go back to the beginning. You're going to see in this footage, this is Brian Bailey going around the apartment or the set of buildings there where the incident took place. We went live from that location, not very far from there. He approaches the suspect, who's going to be in between these two buildings. Now, I'm going to pause and frame forward here a little bit. As you can see him approaching the suspect has his right hand behind him. Unfortunately, this video was provided to us with this weird picture-in-picture effect by Jonesboro police. And because of that, it makes it harder for us to show you what we actually need to show you, which would probably be a little bit helpful for police. But we'll talk about that another time. In the lower right-hand corner of this video, you see the suspect. Watch in these few frames as his right hand moves up. He's in all black, so it's tough to kind of see, especially with those pixels, you know, at the bottom. There's just so few of them for us to see what's happening. But there, you see his elbow poke out because he's raising his arm up. And right there, the gun is out. The suspect has pulled the gun now on the police officer. And this is the part a lot of people seem to miss. He's pulling that there. And watch. The suspect doesn't drop the gun one time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and arguably 5 times. The officer told him to drop the gun. It's tragic because this man's death has taken place and we're witnessing the moments involved leading up to that. But I'm seeing people blaming the officers, and I believe the officer's life may have seriously been in danger at that moment. I also believe, based on what I've viewed in this footage, that these officers were devastated that they had to do this. Devastated. There's no way around that. Watch, again, the picture-in-picture effect is unfortunately all we have. He pulls the gun on the officer there. The gun's out. Officer Bailey's gun is just barely being pulled out afterwards. Now, why do you pull a gun on a police officer? In this case, the suspect was wanted, and police knew that the suspect was wanted. The suspect's name, Rodney Fisher, and Fisher was wanted for first-degree murder. Now, how do we know that the officers knew Fisher? If you continue watching after this disturbing part, the officers identify him by name before the man says a word to them. Listen again. And I'm going to try to get past the most difficult part of this for you to hear.
Shots fired. Y'all get over here. Ray Street. Shots fired. Rodney, don't move. Nicole, don't move.
Did you hear that? Rodney, don't move. Nicole, don't move. The officer did not ask for their identification. They already knew. Both officers already knew who these two were. And that's really important because going into this, officers know this man is an accused murderer. A man is also accused of saying he does not want to be taken alive by police. And a man that, watch, and let what this video shows speak for itself. He's a man that pulled a gun on the officer before the officer had his gun out. If an officer approaches you and you have a gun on you, what do? Everyone knows if they've had a concealed carry class or probably just a bit of common sense, you tell the officer immediately so that he can take it from you and feel safe going forward in the encounter. You're never going to win if you're trying to outgun the police. But watch. He pulled the gun there. Pulled the gun first on the officer, and his finger was on the trigger when he pulled it. He holds the hand up. He's still got the gun in his hand. Now look at the direction he's pointing it to. It's tough to see. The video quality is rough. But again, take a closer look. Watch closely. In this video that I've zoomed in on and tried my best to enhance, he pulls the gun and in that moment aims it in the direction of the officer. Not necessarily aiming down the barrel, but the gun barrel was aimed toward the officer. He aims it around several times too, but more importantly, and I hate showing this over and over, but I want to be sure that we are careful before we publicly convict people in the court of public opinion, something that is mob justice based. I want to be careful and I want to make sure that this image is what we're looking at. Because this image shows a suspect pulling a gun, a murder suspect pulling a gun, hand on the trigger, and in a fighting stance, no less, when you have one foot posted toward the other with your weight on the back foot. He's not in a friendly stance. And he pulls the gun on Officer Bailey. And behind him is his partner, Officer Jefferson. And two of them, in addition to being law enforcement officers, they're friends. They're human beings. And they're people that did not, based on what I'm going to show you after this, want to do what had to happen here. He holds the gun there. And then he raises the gun. And it seems to be aimed in the direction of the officer. The officer now has an adrenaline rush and a fear that one of us probably can never imagine. A murder suspect pulling a gun on him. And he knows who the man is. We've established that. The man aims the gun for several seconds toward the officer. Then he aims it away. And then he holds it in his hand, continued. But the officer tells him 4 times or 5 times, depending on how you look at it, to drop the gun, and he did not. This was not a negotiation. This was not a request. The officers didn't even have to tell him the first time to drop it. They were well within their rights to defend themselves, but these were human beings that did not want to take a life. And the tragic element of this is that they did take a life. But I want to show you something else. And I want to show you something because this is not going to get as much attention, okay? Officer Bailey's video shows what happens next. As he's talking to Detective Kerry Varner, Officer Jefferson drops to his knees. His hands clasped together, and he turns off his body camera because he doesn't want it to catch the intense, painful moments that he's experiencing of grief. The man will have to live for the rest of his life with this, but also with the comments from countless people online. Countless people that are saying that the officers should have been arrested, and based on what we're looking at here, the officers could have been killed. One or both of them, very easily. And it may be just for that moment of hesitation from the suspect that is the only reason they weren't. But please consider your words carefully online, folks, because these men, these people, they have families. They grieve as well. And as you go through this, the difficult part is there. But then you can skip forward and you can see them trying their best to make sure to apply tourniquet, to check his wounds. They had to secure him. It was a difficult video to watch, of course. But those men, they stayed there. They did their best to keep him alive. And thoughts on the scene, hopes at the scene were that he would survive when I arrived. Unfortunately, that did not take place. But as you can see, the larger video is Officer Jefferson's. And even though he's there with Officer Bailey, he has to walk away. And that's the moment, as we saw in the video on the lower right, that he drops to his knees with his hands clasped together. And he forgets he's on camera. He almost instantly just turns that off, which is where you see his hand come up. It's difficult stuff. And it is a tragic situation. But when you look at all of it together, it does appear that the decision made by Prosecutor Ellington and police was the correct one. So I've got some comments that I want to look at in chat. I want to see what I can do to try to help answer any questions that folks have. I see a lot of people having opinions, and I understand everyone does have an opinion on this stuff to share. By the way, first of all, apologies because I sound terrible. I don't know why. I guess I'm catching the flu again. But let's go back to the subject at hand. I know it's very serious. So somebody said when a gun was not pointed at him, period, point blank, no excuse for it. So you don't have a right to continue holding your gun in your hand when an officer tells you to drop it and he's lawfully detaining you. I mean, at that point, the officer fears for his life. You have to let go, right? The guy pulled the gun at the beginning before the officer had his out. A lot of people are missing that because they're having difficulty letting go with their bias in this, and I understand. But see right there, that's the gun pulled on the officer before he has his out. This is not still under investigation, Cammie. This has been cleared, or rather the officers have been cleared. And you can see why. I mean, again, I've mentioned this before, everybody has opinions, but only certain opinions end up mattering. And Prosecutor Ellington's and his office is one of those. And his was that this was a consistent use of force by police. Again, you see the gun coming out there, being pulled first. I acknowledge, by the way, I want to point something out to everybody. I acknowledge a lot of times police do get by with stuff maybe that shouldn't happen, but that is not what I'm seeing here. And I just want to be totally fair, because after several moments you see the officer's gun come up. He's had a gun pulled on him, and that counts as pulling a gun on someone. And then from there, as we continue framing forward, because I've seen some people asking, where did he point the gun? Here's the gun going up. I know it's tough to see. I'll explain more about that in just one moment. But the gun goes up. I can't see what direction it's pointed in there, but it does look to be thin, which would indicate toward the camera, right? Because then if you keep watching, when you watch, the gun almost seems like it sways toward him a little bit more. I'm not saying he's aiming down the barrel, But of course, a lot of people don't stop and pay attention to that, right? What I'm saying is that he is aiming the gun. He is waving the gun around. He has pulled a gun on police. More importantly, he's recognized as a murder suspect. There you see the gun's almost aimed at himself, right? Then right here, it's aimed away. You have to take a look at the facts. And the reason I'm pointing all this out, we have the luxury of going through this frame by frame. We really have a luxury that these officers did not have there that day. But they told him 4 to 5 times, drop the gun. He did not. He pulled the gun before officers had theirs out. The facts speak for themselves. Unfortunately, this resulted in a loss of life. My thoughts and condolences are with the family of the suspect whom was killed. My thoughts go out to the family and to the officers as well. Not everyone will agree, but we appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in to NEA Report. And we thank you so very much for watching.